The rise of the teenager had begun in the 1950s, when Teddy Boys formed the first teenage gangs. But it wasn't until the 1960s that they really found their feet. For a young lad called Len, it was a time of great freedom.
The general theme of that era was just raw and exciting, and things were happening so fast, and we all went with it.
By the beginning of the 60s, compulsory national service had come to an end, and virtually full employment meant young people had money to burn. It was just when John was trying to find his way in life.
I think the first year I left school, I had 15 jobs in a year. I remember starting at one particular job on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock, left at 10 o'clock, and started another job that afternoon. So we were getting money in our pockets, which we never had before. There was a great deal more to do. Clubs were starting to appear in the West End of London. The music scene had changed quite rapidly, and it was a pretty exciting time.
They'd rejected the styles and tastes of their parents, but there was a need to belong, so young people turned to gangs to give them a visible cultural identity. Mods and rockers were born, and came to symbolise two very different ideologies.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway.
These were your mates, like, as you was growing up, and you got to a certain age, and certain things become different. For me, it was motorbikes. It was I wanted to know how they worked, and when they broke down, I wanted to fix them. Whereas, like, one of the lads I'd be growing up with, he wanted to look good on a, for the girls or whatever. He wanted to look smart. They're just different mindsets.
As the Teddy Boys grew up, rockers took their place. They defined their style through white American rock and roll stars of the 50s, like Elvis. Motorbikes, jeans and decorated leather jackets were essential.
Woo, come on, everybody.
My first recollection of becoming a rocker was when I was 14 years old. One of the lads in the flats I lived in Battersea got captured by a woman, and he had to give his motorbike up. And part of his stuff that he gave away was a leather jacket. And the jacket I got, it had, I still remember it now, it had tassels on it. And on the back of it, it had like a graveyard scenes and skull and crossbones and little bits. And it had a poem on it, which was picked out in studs. And I still remember the poem. It's death be to all thee who ride with me, on the back of it, right? And he gave me this jacket, and I was, wow, that's almost like armour.
I'm slipping and I'm sliding, peeking and I'm hiding, been told a long time ago.
To the mods, rockers were out of date.
Rockers, to us, they were very strange. We called them greasers, rockers. They always looked, or so we thought, scruffy and dirty and covered in Brill cream. Any mod at the time would have said that the rockers were their sworn enemies,
No greasy bikes for the mods. Scooters were their thing. They listened to black American R&B, ska and British bands like The Who and The Small Faces. Mods tended to be city types and, like the Teddy Boys before them, took great pride in their appearance.
Every mod would go and have his suit made, so every suit was slightly different, but there was a vast array of colours. As I remember, my first suit cost 25 guineas, and I eventually settled on a bottle green 3-ply mohair, which was, seemed absolutely brilliant at the time. It was a little bit, when I think back, it's probably a little bit leery now, but that was what you wanted. My first suit was a memory that will stay with me forever.
With such different styles and attitudes, it wasn't surprising the two groups didn't always get on. On the May Day bank holiday of 1964, tensions rose to a head, and the mods and the rockers clashed in Brighton.
What caused all this trouble yesterday?
Boredom.
On whose part?
Well, on both. They started, you know what rockers are like, don't you?
I went down to Brighton twice. There was literally thousands of mods spread out on the beach, having a good time. I mean, you know, playing music and transistor radios, all the rest of it. And every now and again, someone would jump up and shout out Grease or Rockers, and the whole lot would rise as one and start running up the road. People pushed over and things knocked over. And I know there were some windows broken and things. There were people arrested and there were a few fights and skirmishes, but it was all very minor for what I could see. But of course, when we got back and read the papers on the following day, it was a different story altogether, like a story of these mass riots and mods and rockers fighting and the police going in mob-handed and all that, and it just got blown out of all proportion.
Boom, 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 boom.
Prior to '64, the image of the rockers wasn't great anyway. So after the battles, the mods actually come out worse in terms of their image, because up until then they was always seen as the clean-cut, decent lads, and we was like, you can't come in here with your leather jacket on. So in a way, it kind of like rebalanced that for us.
It didn't bother us to be called hooligans and all the rest of it, because half of us probably were anyway, so it wasn't something we were particularly bothered about. I think that the media got hold of this and blew it up, and I think that allied with several other things like the commercialism of the mod thing by the fashion industry was the beginning of the end for the mod movement. Everyone was a mod suddenly, you know. It was a street thing originally, it had come from the streets. Once it became commercialised, I think that was the end of the whole thing.
Baby, please don't go.
Rockers had some influence on punk rock bands in the 1970s. Mods found themselves split between joining the culture of swinging London or becoming skinheads. John and Len still look back with fond memories.
We're that much older and that much wiser, and you know, I never forgot the era, I never forgot the period. I tried to recreate some of it by organising and putting together a Rockers reunion. It kind of like reinvigorated it. But it is literally camaraderie now, where you've survived as well as me, because so many ain't with us now, you know.
These days I think mods and rockers are pretty friendly, you know. I often see a group of mods down the road followed by a group of rockers. They get together and reminisce about old times, but I still hate them.
Don't go.